So, Cave Story is 16 years old now, and I've been playing it for 7 of those years. If you know me, which I'm assuming a lot of the audience for this video does, you already know how obsessed with Cave Story I am. I own all but 2 official releases of the game, have played through it countless times, and am now making this video. My big Cave Story video is something I've wanted to make for a very long time, but I've always put it off due to a lack of experience, a lack of time, and a lack of a real vision for what a big Cave Story video for me could be like. Probably the largest factor deterring me from making a Cave Story video has been the inherent bias. If I made a traditional review or analysis or what have you, it would be incredibly biased and barely worth watching for that very reason. It's something that I will inevitably make someday, but this video is not that. This video is a less structured take on Cave Story and more of a love letter. I'll be talking about the background of the game, what I love, what I don't love, and maybe try to figure out just why Cave Story struck such a chord with me as a kid, and even now as a teenager. Cave Story, a plain and simple translation of the Japanese title Dokutsu Monogatari, is a game released on December 20th, 2004 by Daisuke Amaya, also known as Pixel. Amaya is the sole member of Studio Pixel and built every aspect of the game all by himself. This includes the game's engine, artwork, assets, character designs, story, script, music, and even the format of the music and the production tools used to make it, titled Organia or OrgMaker respectively. Cave Story was developed in Pixel's free time over the course of 4 years, but wasn't Pixel's first game. Pixel's first games date back to the late 90s and early 2000s. From 1997 to 1999, he made games like Azarashi 1998, Jill, and the unreleased Doggy Wyvern. Pixel also had some musical tools released at this time, including Rain and Pio Pio, as well as the aforementioned OrgMaker released in 2000. However, Pixel's most notable pre-Cave Story work is Ika-chan, released in 1999, which ran as a sort of engine test for Cave Story. In Ika-chan, you play as a cute little squid in an area of the sea dominated by the fish Ironhead. After finishing Ika-chan, work began on Cave Story, and the game was released in 2004. Cave Story was a big hit in the developing indie scene, and as a result has been ported to tons of platforms and tons of languages. Despite what the countless Nicholas re-releases may lead you to believe, Cave Story is actually 100% free and available from the Cave Story tribute site at cavestory.org. The Windows version is available in the original Japanese, as well as fan translations in English, Brazilian Portuguese, simplified and traditional Chinese, Dutch, French, German, Italian, Korean, Lithuanian, Polish, European Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. The game has been ported to Mac and Linux in Japanese and English, as well as releases on the Commodore Amiga, PSP, Xbox, WebAssembly, GBA, Nintendo DS, Sega Genesis, RetroArch, GameCube, Dreamcast, Raspberry Pi, and even the TI Inspire calculator, among other platforms. Official ports from Nicholas are available on Steam, the Epic Games Store, the 3DS eShop, the Switch, as well as delisted versions on the WiiWare and DSiWare. Most of these versions have additional graphical and musical options, as well as bonus modes, and are solid ports. Additionally, there's a 3DS release by NIS America known as Cave Story 3D, which overhauls the graphics, and I have not played it yet. If any of these versions of the game have piqued your interest, I implore you to take a look, as it's likely available for free on at least one platform you own. So, what is the deal with Cave Story? I'll try my best to avoid any major spoilers for the first portion of this video, but later on I'll give a spoiler warning and a timestamp to skip to my conclusions on the game. In Cave Story, you play as a robot boy who doesn't speak or emote throughout the game. Soon, you find your first weapon and stumble into the Mimiga village. The caves you find yourself in are home to a race of little rabbit dog creatures named Mimiga. You find out that they've been slowly being kidnapped by a man simply referred to as the Doctor, and you are stringed along a series of areas in hopes of finding out who you are, who the Doctor is, who the Mimiga are, and the truth about the caves. Cave Story isn't Citizen Kane or anything, but it is packed with fun and interesting characters, funny dialogue, and a mysterious yet adventurous atmosphere. Cave Story's gameplay is simple and addicting. The robot has a pretty rudimentary platforming moveset. He can move left and right, jump, and shoot in the cardinal directions. Later on, you'll also gain access to one of 2 different mobility accessories that I'll touch on later. Health capsules litter Cave Story's areas, with your health capping out at 55 if you find everything along your way. Additionally, the robot doesn't stick to his starting pistol, as many weapons can be found, received, or even traded for. Most aren't too hard to find, but a few of the best will require some out-of-the-way hunting and backtracking. The robot controls a little slippery, which can take some getting used to, but most levels are open enough to complement his looser control. However, Cave Story's platforming is often pixel perfect, so mastering the robot's controls is vital and usually it'll come naturally. Here's this video's first spoiler warning. From here I'll be spoiling some gameplay elements including weapons, equipment, bosses, and areas, as well as major story elements. If you wish to steer clear of spoilers, go to the listed timestamp to skip to my conclusion. Good? Good. So, now that we've established what Cave Story is, I'd like to talk a bit about what makes the game so special. I first discovered Cave Story in 2013 after watching Some Call Me Johnny's video on the game for his indie game marathon. Seeing the game was on Wii and free on PC, I quickly checked it out and fell in love. As I'd grown up loving retro games, the visuals, music, and basic gameplay felt very familiar to me. The Metroidvania genre was new to me, so the non-linear design was something I wasn't used to, but I had a lot of fun exploring. The environments and characters had nice designs and tons of personality, and the music was absolutely fantastic. I've been playing it throughout the video, but seriously, take a listen to some of this stuff, it's great. Cave Story's progression is incredibly satisfying, and the weapon utility is pretty stable until around the final stretch. The varied shot types and damage output of each weapon give each one some kind of use for most of the game. The Polar Star is a solid option for head-on, quick damage output if you can hone your mashing. The Missile Launcher is good for a quick burst of insane damage against bosses. The Fireball is good for enemies below, and can have a higher DPS than the Polar Star depending on the conditions. The Bubbler, while not the strongest, gives solid defense at level 3 and is also a good automatic option at level 2. The Machine Gun is good for the early game as a stronger replacement to the Polar Star, as well as assisting in platforming with its propulsion capabilities. The Snake is a solid option for when you need to hit an enemy through a wall, and is a solid upgrade to the Fireball. The Blade works well for DPS and, at level 3, crowd control. The Nemesis is a great risk versus reward option with insane damage that gets worse as you level up. And of course, the Mac Daddy of all Cave Story weaponry, the Spur. While a bit unconventional to acquire, making the player fuse all Polar Star upgrades and then return to the game's starting area towards the end of the game, the Spur is more than worth it and almost vital to completion for all but the most skilled player. Charging up instead of gaining XP, the Spur lets out a gigantic laser that will be your go-to from the instant you acquire it to the very end of the game, and is more than worth the time investment of the Polar Star. Speaking of XP, Cave Story's level system is also pretty interesting. As you kill enemies, they'll drop little XP nachos, which count towards this bar below your HP. Every weapon has a different XP bar, and each has 3 levels. However, if you're damaged, your level will absolutely plummet, so it gives incentive to not only show caution while fighting, but to be careful of what you have on hand in the event that you do take a hit. This also incentivizes killing enemies, as you'll usually be below full XP or HP on at least one weapon. As mentioned, Cave Story's visual style is very appealing, with Pixel's style being instantly recognizable through all of his main works. The character designs are simple and charming, with each of them sticking out from both the environments and one another. The Nicholas version's remastered graphics and new artwork complement these designs well, and I have to give special props to the artist Shinonoko, who translates the characters incredibly well to their simplistic style. So if you like their art, go check out their pixel in the description. Like I briefly touched on before, the music in Cave Story is fantastic. Pixel's Organia format fits the game's presentation incredibly well, and it gives all the music a very distinct instrumental identity. Tracks for the action-packed areas like Mischievous Robot, Meltdown 2, Jenka 2, and Last Cave get the blood pumping like nothing else. Boss themes like Oppression, Gravity, and the previously played Eyes of Flame give off a fast pace and high intensity. However, later on the game's music takes a much more somber turn with Quiet, Balcony, and the iconic Moon Song. This evolution in music fits the game's tonal shift in the second half very well, and each track does a great deal to make each area feel very alive. Well, I'm sure you can tell by now I love Cave Story to bits, but it's not without fault. The main point of contempt with Cave Story is for sure the game's best ending. If you still care about story spoilers, this is your big moment to turn back, because I'm going to go nitty gritty into the incredibly cryptic process of getting Cave Story's best ending. So, the steps to getting the best ending are as follows. Towards the end of the labyrinth area, you'll see the character Professor Booster inexplicably fall down a pit before your very eyes. Going down to check on him will prompt a cutscene where the professor gives you an item called the Booster version 0.8, followed by his death. This cutscene will lock you out of the best ending. Instead, you'll want to jump right over Booster and proceed to the next area, completely ignoring him. Important to note too is that you can't jump back up if you fall down this pit without the booster, so you'll need to drown yourself if you misplace the jump. Thankfully, there's a save point right next to it. After skipping over Booster, proceed through the labyrinth as normal until you get to the location for the core boss fight. Before initiating the fight, go down to the bottom right of the area in the water and grab the tow rope item. There's absolutely no indication that you'd want to go down there, and I'm pretty sure you can't grab it during the fight. I know for sure you can't grab it after. After the core boss, interact with Curly on the ground and pick her up with the tow rope. Proceed through the waterway area, making sure to stop at this little room on the side. If you miss it, which you probably will the first couple tries, you'll have to reset and try again. In this room, go through the steps of fixing Curly, and make sure to leave the room with her on your back. Continue normally, and later in Arthur's house, you'll see Professor Booster come through the teleporter in full health and give you an improved version of the booster, called the Booster version 2.0, and send you on your way through Egg Corridor and towards the end of the game. Soon you'll reach the plantation, where you'll find Curly in a bed in the corner of the map. Talk to the guy next to her, and he'll tell you about a mushroom that can cure amnesia. If you remember right, you'll know that the cemetery in Mimiga Village has a lot of mushrooms, and that's exactly where you're going. With the booster, you can reach the door that was previously inaccessible, and find Ma Pignon. Solve his riddle, get the mushroom badge, check on the mushroom badge to see that it does nothing, talk to Ma Pignon, defeat him, and bring him back to Curly. Upon feeding Ma Pignon to Curly, she'll give some exposition about your origins and reveal your name to be Quote. Talk to her a couple more times, and she'll give you the Iron Bond, which is the item that activates the third ending. Without a shadow of a doubt, there is some mega cryptic bullshit in this ending. Not saving Booster is a totally left field requirement, and really should have just been skipped in favor of acquiring the tow rope regardless. Maybe at some point in Labyrinth, you can talk to Booster and he'll tell you he's been working on a jetpack, and he tells you that you can either have the incomplete version he's working on, or wait it out a little bit to get the completed version. Keep the Curly stuff in, as that's mostly fine and provides good exposition, and maybe give an explanation that the booster takes up too much space or braid on Quote, so he can't use the tow rope to carry Curly. It's gonna be a janky explanation no matter what, but they could have given a way better reason for this tow rope bullshit. Obviously, it's there for a gameplay reason, as the booster version 0.8 is not able to carry the player through the very last cave and Sacred Grounds, but it still could have been done better. The finale to Cave Story itself, though, is an absolute highlight. It's an insane difficulty spike for sure, so much that you're even given the option to back out and get the normal ending if it's too much for you. However, if you dare take on the Sacred Grounds, you're in for a real treat. The second room is a little too heavy on RNG, but the rest is a tried and true gauntlet where the Cave Story demands the very best you can muster in order to reach the end. With the area being about 5 to 8 minutes long, and packed to the brim with enemies, followed by, essentially, 5 boss encounters without a single health station or save point. Cave Story's Sacred Grounds is easily one of the best feelings of accomplishment I've ever felt from overcoming a challenge in a video game. In fact, the Sacred Grounds took me 5 whole years to get past, but I can now breeze through it without too much issue. On the whole, I think Cave Story is a timeless classic and a very important piece of gaming history. Not only did it contribute majorly to the big indie game movement of the late 2000s and early 2010s, but it's also just a great time in general. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But is it a fun time from start to finish? I'd say it absolutely is. and at a price tag of nothing, everyone interested in indie games or games in general owes it to themselves to try out Cave Story. If you like Cave Story and want to directly support Pixel himself, try out Carol Blaster. It's only a few dollars on Steam, Playism, iOS, Switch, and PS4. It's a little short treat from Pixel, and the best way to support him right now in hopes he comes back with another hit someday. For a long time, I've always asked myself, or been asked by other people, why I love this stupid game so much. And I think that while writing this video, I discovered why. I love Cave Story for its visuals, music, gameplay, and story for sure, and revisiting it only strengthened those feelings. But what is and always has been really special about it to me is the creator. When I was little, I always wanted to make video games, but during middle school I wrote it off as an impossible dream to achieve. In the following years, as I went through high school, I thought I could quench that creative thirst through stuff like comics, animation, film, or traditional writing. But recently I realized that that stuff isn't what I want to do with myself, and I really do have ideas that I can only put through in video games. All I can think of is how thankful I am for games like Cave Story for making me realize that I, even if I'm doing it alone, can make a game if I really learn how to, and how stupid I am for not realizing that when the epitome of an indie game, my favorite game of all time, was right in front of me through it all. My love for Cave Story goes beyond the game. It's about what it stands for to me and surely so many independent developers over the years. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to SK and Maya for introducing this game into my life and forever shaping my creative mind. Well, with all that being said, happy 16th anniversary Cave Story, and here's for, hopefully, many more to come. Peace. Hello, thank you so much for watching this video. I have wanted to make something like this for years now, and I am glad that I finally got the chance to. Just here, off the top of my head, I'd like to for sure thank Ikuyo and the rest of the team over at Cave Story Engine 2. The gameplay in this video was recorded on Cave Story Engine 2. It's a sort of source port type of deal of Cave Story with widescreen and 60 FPS and some other improvements. It's my favorite way to play the game. I'm really happy it exists. Sadly, it got DMCA'd recently, but much love to all the team. I'll link who I believe is their lead developer in the description. So, thank you so much for watching. See ya.